Disha, hey, it's John with Contract Diagnostics. And to revisit this question for Dr. Chen, the urologist, if he or she is closing their practice, I had answered the question before if they were employed and they were leaving and transitioning to a new opportunity. If they're the ones that own the practice, I would assume that they maintain the policy on their own. They own the policy. So in this situation, I believe there are less options than if you're employed because there's nobody to negotiate with as far as the transition plan goes. You're only there by yourself. So the option, unfortunately, is pay for the tail. If it's $160,000, I think it was the basic quote. Again, very expensive and something that would need to be paid to transition away from. If Dr. Chen is going to an employed position at an organization, most contracts will say they need to prove prior acts are covered. So they would not be able to take a position at another organization without proving that their prior acts was covered or that their nose was covered or their tail was paid, however you want to verbalize it, for your next employer. So it's going to be required, I'm assuming, to take the next position. So the options are, like I said, A, buy it, prove to them that it's covered. The other policy, or the other option would be, is to keep the plan in place. You don't terminate the policy, you just transition where you're providing practice and medicine. So you would call your broker or let him or her know that I'm moving from this location to that location, here's the new setup. I would assume that you could transition and keep the policy without having to terminate the policy. And if the policy continues, you would be not obligated to purchase a tail insurance because you wouldn't need to. The policy remains in effect. Now, if you work for the practice that you're hired by for 3 or 4 years, you don't like it there and you terminate, you're going to have to tail out. And I'm guessing that tail is a fully mature policy at $160,000, and he or she would have to pay that tail policy at that time. The other opportunity would be is have the organization assume prior acts. So maybe they could assume the policy. Maybe they could buy the tail. So another example would be if you are $160,000 on a tail insurance, and let's say that you're a urologist, they're offering you $500,000 a year for pay. You could take a salary of $350,000 year one. You would be taxed on the $350,000 instead of the $500. They would pay the malpractice tail in full, and then you would have a bump in salary in your year two. That's one option that might be able to mitigate a little bit of taxes. I am not a CPA or a tax professional, but that is something that we've seen people do in the past. We've also seen, like I said, the employer assume the policy, or you could cancel the policy and the employer would assume prior acts. So you maybe don't need to tail out of the policy. You could go bare, if you will, on that policy, and they would underwrite a prior acts coverage policy for their policy. So I think it's one of those things that's just good to be transparent with your next employer. It's good to have that conversation with them, let them know the situation, and ask them for advice on how they could cover it as well. I believe there's a few options. One is pay the darn thing. 2 is take a lesser salary and have them pay for it. That way you won't be taxed on the salary or the dollars that you would normally have earned to pay for the tail. The other thing would be is have them assume the policy or to cancel the policy. Don't tail out if you're not required to. If you own the practice, there's no requirement to. Again, make sure you connect with the liability brokers to make sure that everything's covered. But maybe you don't have to buy tail. Your next employer could just assume prior acts. So I think it's a question for the malpractice brokers. I think it's a question for the next practice that Dr. Chen's going to go work for. But those are my creative ideas and solutions as a negotiator for these things on things that I would come up with. Whether the practice agrees, whether it's possible or not, I don't know. But I think we can get creative here and hopefully save Dr. Chen quite a bit of money. I hope that answers the question. And if anybody has any more questions, send them in. I'm always happy to answer any questions. They can send them in to you, of course. Check us out at contractdiagnostics.com. We have free 15-minute sessions on our website that anybody can sign up for at any time with no fee. It's just a free 15-minute catch our ear. So thanks for all your efforts out there. I love how you educate everybody, and we're here to do the same. Have a great day.